Simon had passed
Media
through
Demo.
the area of fruit trees, but today the little ones had been too busy with the fire on the beach, and they had not pursued him there. He went on among the creepers until he reached the great mat that was woven by the open space and crawled inside. Beyond the screen of leaves,
Media Demo.
the sunlight pelted down, and the butterflies danced in the middle their unending dance. He knelt down, and the arrow of the sun fell on him. That other time the air had seemed to vibrate with heat, but now it threatened. Soon the sweat
Media
was running
Demo.
from his long, coarse hair. He shifted restlessly, but there was no avoiding the sun. Presently he was thirsty, and then very thirsty. He continued to sit. Far off along the beach, Jack was
Media
standing before
Demo.
a small group of boys. He was looking brilliantly happy. Hunting, he said. He sized them up. Each of them wore the remains of a black cap, and ages ago they had stood in two demure rows, and their voices had been the song of angels.
Media
hunt.
Demo.
I'm going to be chief. They nodded, and the crisis passed easily. And then, about the beast. They moved, looked at the forest. I say this. We aren't going to bother about the beast. He nodded at them.
Media
We're going to
Demo.
forget the beast. That's right, yes, forget the beast. If Jack was astonished by their fervour, he did not show it. And another thing. We shan't dream so much down here. This is near the end of the island. They agreed passionately out of the
Media
depths
Demo.
of their tormented private lives. Now listen. We might go later to the Castle Rock, but now I'm going to get more of the big uns away from the conch and all that. We'll kill a pig and give a feast. He paused and went on more slowly. And about
Media
the
Demo.
beast. When we kill, we'll leave some of the kill for it. Then it won't bother us, maybe. He stood up abruptly. We'll go into the forest now and hunt. He turned and trotted away, and after a moment they followed him
Media
obediently.
Demo.
They spread out nervously in the forest. Almost at once Jack found the dug and scattered roots that told of pig, and soon the track was fresh. Jack signalled the rest of the hunt to be quiet and went forward by
Media
himself.
Demo.
He was happy and wore the damp darkness of the forest like his old clothes. He crept down a slope to rocks and scattered trees by the sea. The pigs lay, bloated bags of fat, sensuously enjoying the shadows under the trees.
Media Demo.
There was no wind and they were unsuspicious, and practice had made Jack silent as the shadows. He stole away again and instructed his hidden hunters. Presently they all began to inch forward, sweating in the silence and heat. Under the
Media
trees,
Demo.
an ear flapped idly. A little apart from the rest, sunk in deep maternal bliss, lay the largest sow of the lot. She was black and pink, and the great bladder of her belly was fringed with a row of piglets that slept or burrowed
Media
and
Demo.
squeaked. 15 yards from the drove, Jack stopped, and his arm, straightening, pointed at the sow. He looked round in inquiry to make sure that everyone understood, and the other boys nodded at him. The row of right
Media
arms
Demo.
slid back. Now. The drove of pigs started up, and at a range of only 10 yards, the wooden spears, with fire-hardened points, flew towards the chosen pig. One piglet, with a demented shriek, rushed
Media
into the
Demo.
sea, trailing Roger's spear behind it. The sow gave a gasping squeal and staggered up, with 2 spears sticking in her fat flank. The boys shouted and rushed forward. The piglets scattered, and the sow burst the advancing line and went
Media
crashing
Demo.
away through the forest. After her. They raced along the pig track, but the forest was too dark and tangled, so that Jack, cursing, stopped them and cast among the trees. Then he said nothing for a time, but breathed fiercely so that they were awed by him
Media
and looked at
Demo.
each other in uneasy admiration. Presently he stabbed down at the ground with his finger. There. Before the others could examine the drop of blood, Jack had swerved off, judging a trace, touching a bough that gave. So he followed,
Media
mysteriously
Demo.
right and assured, and the hunters trod behind him. He stopped before a covert. In there. They surrounded the covert, but the sow got away with the sting of another spear in her flank. The trailing butts hindered her, and the sharp
AVS
cross-cut
Media
points were
Demo.
a torment. She blundered into a tree, forcing a spear still deeper, and after that any of the hunters could follow her easily by the drops of vivid blood. The afternoon wore on, hazy and dreadful with damp heat. The
AVS
sow
Media
staggered her
Demo.
way ahead of them, bleeding and mad, and the hunters followed, wedded to her in lust, excited by the long chase and the dropped blood. They could see her now, nearly got up with her, but she spurted with her last strength and held ahead of them
AVS
again.
Media Demo.
They were just behind her when she staggered into an open space where bright flowers grew and butterflies danced round each other, and the air was hot and still. Here, struck down by the heat, the sow fell, and the hunters hurled themselves at her.
AVS Media Demo.
This dreadful eruption from an unknown world made her frantic. She squealed and bucked, and the air was full of sweat and noise and blood and terror. Roger ran round the heap, prodding with his spear whenever pig flesh appeared. Jack was on top of the sow,
AVS
stabbing
Media
downward
Demo.
with his knife. Roger found a lodgment for his point and began to push till he was leaning with his whole weight. The spear moved forward inch by inch, and the terrified squealing became a high-pitched scream. Then Jack found the
AVS
throat,
Media
and the
Demo.
hot blood spouted over his hands. The sow collapsed under them, and they were heavy and fulfilled upon her. The butterflies still danced, preoccupied in the centre of the clearing.